Welcome, ladies and gents. Chris Andre here. You can find me at BetBoxing on Twitter. Of course, you can subscribe to the channel. I'm absolutely delighted today to be joined by Wayne Alexander, the former British and European champion, former world title challenger. Wayne, I'm so happy to have you on. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Chris. How are you?
I'm good, my friend. How are you keeping?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. I'm good.
I have to say, Wayne, I'm absolutely buzzing because, it's one thing to approach a fighter and say, excuse me, can I have an interview? But for a fighter of your credentials, the way this came about, I have to tell my subscriber because I told all my friends, my family, I was so excited. I did a technical breakdown video where I was talking about the technical and tactical elements of the Florian Marku fight recently, errors he was making, positives. And you watched the video, you left the comment down below to say, you seem like you really know your stuff. And when you're talking about a guy that's achieved as much as you have in the sport, you've trained with people like Jimmy Tibbs, who's boxing royalty in this country. It was such a brilliant moment for me. I was buzzing. I showed my friends, I showed my family. So then to be able to approach you and say, please come on, and for you to agree, I'm delighted. So thank you so much, Wayne, for being with us.
No worries, mate. Like I said, I watch a lot of the YouTube podcasts, and a lot of the guys, don't really know what they're talking about. You know what I mean? A lot of them, and I've not really heard about you, to tell you the truth. But when I watched you for that, just that 10 minutes, I knew they knew your stuff. You know what I mean? Just hearing you for 10 minutes, I knew they knew your boxing. You know what I mean? So keep it up, mate. Keep up the good work.
Well, thank you so much, Wayne. I appreciate that. Let's get started. Let's talk a little bit about
Yeah,
your career. I also want to use your experiences because you were a massive punching light middleweight. So I want to talk about the Conor Benn and Eubank fight as well, because Eubank himself is an iron-chinned middleweight, and he's facing a big punching welterweight. Now, obviously, one weight category was above you, one was below you. So later on, I want to talk about how you think that could play out, whether a welterweight of that level that hits that hard can actually hurt a middleweight with a solid chin. You've also done some judging and refereeing, so you've been on both sides of the ropes, and I want to talk to you a little bit about that, the state of judging and refereeing in the sport with Canelo-Golovkin coming up. Obviously, that was controversial the first couple of fights, so I'm going to get your opinion on those things too. I've got some questions as well from the public, so we've got lots to cover today. So let's start off talking about one of the big fights you first had, and that was the Paul Samuels fight. It was for the vacant British light middleweight title. It was a barn burner of a fight. And to me, it was obvious from the moment you entered the ring that it was going to be brilliant, because he was bouncing up and down and he was facing his own corner. And you walked straight up to him and you started doing the same thing, right in his face, invading his personal space. You were showing your aggressive ambition. Boxing News actually described it as the British Hagler Hearns, if I remember rightly, and it was a terrific fight for those that have not seen it. Can you tell us a little bit about what your mindset was going into that fight? Yeah, what you expected, what was going through your mind?
Yeah, listen, Paul Samuels, let me first start. He's probably the hardest puncher I have fought as a pro. He was undefeated, 15-0, 30 knockouts. So, I went in the ring knowing if I got caught with him clean, I'd be out. You know what I mean? He had a good training behind him. He had Endo McAnally's, so he had Joe Kazaki's father and training him. So he had a good trainer. So I went in the fight, fit, nervous, but I was well hyped up as well. You know what I mean? So I went in there, to win the fight.
How do you go about controlling those nerves? Because obviously you're talking about some huge heavy lever going in there from both men. You were a monster puncher. He was a monster puncher. The nerves are there, but you've also got to get into that aggressive nature. How do you go about balancing that so that you control it, so that it doesn't become fear?
That is true. I mean, Mike Tyson once says, "Fear is a man's best friend." You know what I mean? He's how you use fear. Fear can keep you on edge, can keep you sharp, keep you alert. So that is how I manage my fear. I had a great trainer behind me as well with Jimmy Tibbs. Jimmy Tibbs taught me, to be calm, cool and collected. Don't let fear overcome you. Do you know what I mean? Use the fear to make you sharp, make you alert. Keep you sharp. That's what I done.
And you went in there and it was, like I said, a barn burner of a fight. And, I was watching it again recently the other day, and there were moments in there where there were parts of your game. I'm not saying you're obviously the same fighter or anything like that, but there were parts of your game that a little bit reminded me of Dillian Whyte in some regards, because you'd have that high guard, you duck forward, there'd be a lot of catch and counters, you had a monstrous left hand, you target the body very well, which I thought went under the radar sometimes with commentators. I thought you were a really good body puncher.
Thank you.
But obviously Dillian Whyte came way after you. So in terms
Yeah.
of fighters that came before you, was there anyone that you tried to emulate your style on? Maybe because you had similar attributes, or maybe just because he was a hero of yours? Was there anyone that you looked up to?
Do you know what? I can name a few fighters, like way from the past to up to recently. I mean, I liked Marvin Hagler. You know, he was one of my favorites. You know, growing up as a kid in the early '80s, you know, watching Hagler fight. You know, how he could turn to southpaw. You know, box orthodox. You know, the aggression, the controlled aggression, like we spoke about earlier on. You know, he was one of my favorites. Aaron Pryor, I loved watching Aaron Pryor, the Hawk. You know, I loved his style. He's all that aggression style. You know, heavy hitter. Um, and recently, before me, Nigel Benn. You know, I like Nigel Benn. Nigel Benn came a little bit before me, so I watched a lot of Nigel Benn. You know, you know, his fights against Eubank, you know, were brilliant. You know, McLellan fight was brilliant. You know, so fighters like him, Mike Tyson as well. I liked. You know, all aggressive fighters. You know, who, had control aggression. You know, good head movement. You know, and you know, were exciting, crowd pleasers.
And it's funny because you mentioned all those guys, and with every single one of them, I can actually see a little bit stylistically of them
Yeah,
in you. I mean, you really were brilliant to watch, and I'm not just like, you know, blowing sunshine here. I think you were, if you were around today, where it's a social media world, you would have been a pay-per-view star in the UK, as far as I'm concerned. The entertainment, I mean, it was fight after fight. It was just sensational. But the one thing I do wonder, that Lonsdale belt here in the UK, obviously it's very prestigious. We see it as a big thing. It's a lot more prestigious to us here, say, than the Americans see their national titles. So like the Lonsdale belt to us is a bigger deal than the NABF is to the Americans, for instance.
yeah.
But you didn't go on to choose to defend it for 3 times to be able to keep it outright. What was there a reason for that? Did you just see it as a stepping stone, maybe? What was your reasoning?
You know what? Without sounding too big headed, I couldn't get no defenses. You know, I could name three fights that I could have had, and these guys didn't want to fight. Anthony Farnell, who I'm friends with now. At the time, he didn't want it. He was a big ticket seller. You know, it was too risky a fight for him. He didn't want it. Ryan Rhodes, we offered him a fight. He didn't want it. And also, if I can remember rightly, a guy named Lee Blundell, you know, from up north. We offered him the fight, and he didn't want it either. So one time I was supposed to fight Howard Clark, and I pulled out of that fight through an injury. Yeah, so that's 4 title fights. I mean, I defended it once against Joe Townsley. You know, so I had the title for nearly 3 years, and had one defense. So you know, it was a bit of both, back and forth. You know, I was injured for one fight, and it was hard to get defenses. And at the time I won the title, those interim titles and intercontinental titles came in. Do you know what I mean? So the British title wasn't as prestigious as it was in the 80s and 90s. You had other titles that you could have fought for. You know, so that's mainly the reason why I never got to defend it 3 times. I would love to have won the belt outright. That was a dream of mine, to win it and to win it outright. You know, when I won the title, it changed. It just changed from 2 defenses to 3. You know, so it would have been harder, but I only defended it once. So yeah, that's the reasons why I never got a belt outright. But I never lost it in the ring. That's the main thing. You know, I gave it up.
And you see that when I mentioned earlier about you potentially could have been a pay-per-view star here in the UK, I mean, you hear some of those names, you know, Ryan Rhodes, for instance. Had that been today, you know, you got, you know, 2 very, very talented fighters. You bring them together. There's a domestic rivalry there. Obviously, we're going to go on to talk about Takaloo as well. These are fights that really would have captured the imagination in the UK. So it's a shame that they didn't happen. But you did go on to get a world title opportunity to fight Harry Simon for the WBO title. And you actually got that shot before you won the European, which is unusual. And astonishingly to me, you took that fight on 24 hours notice. That's madness to me. And again, in typical Wayne Alexander fashion, it was all action stuff from the off. You were trading some heavy leather immediately. In the second round, you buzzed him, the sort of shot that had me up on my feet screaming. Unfortunately, you weren't able to take him out. He was able to turn it around in the 5th. Is there a reason you went for it so hard so early from the opening bell? Is it because of that 24 hours notice and you figured, you know what, if I'm going to do this, I need to get it done quickly? Or was it a tactical choice whereby you're thinking he's a very good boxer, So rather than box this guy, I want to turn it into a street fight. What was your mentality for going out so fast and so hard?
Yeah, look, as you said, I was called out 24 hours notice before the fight. I and Jimmy Tibbs, we both spoke over the phone, and said, you know what, Wayne, you've got nothing to lose. You're half fit. You're half fit already. You've got the power and the strength to beat him. You believe in yourself, and what you want to do is try and take him out of there. You've got the power to take him out. I mean, I knew in the back of my mind I couldn't win it on 12 over 12 rounds. I wasn't going to be Harry Simon on points, but I knew I thought I had the power to stop him. So the plan was to go and try to take him out early. And like you said, in round two, we nearly did.
You nearly did. And the thing is, he was a terrific fighter. He retired undefeated. He went on to beat Ronald Wright as well, which is obviously a massive name in the sport. You were 15-0 at the time, and you took it on short notice. So 2 questions here. Firstly, do you think maybe it came a little bit too early for you? And secondly, if you did have longer to prepare, because it was body shots that seemed to get to you in the end. That's what seemed to do the damage. So I'm wondering, if you did have longer to repair, do you think you might have been 100% going into the fight physically? Do you think, had things been differently, if you'd had a 10-week camp, an 8-week camp, that you might have been able to beat Harry Simon on that night?
Yeah, listen, high shot's a good thing, isn't it? If I was 100% prepared, I would have done better. Definitely, I would have paced the fight more, and I think I would have beaten him. Me and Harry speak now, and Harry said to me, "No one's hit him as hard." Harry says to me, "I'm the hardest guy that's ever hit him." You know what I mean? So that's an honor. But yeah, in hindsight, maybe I could have waited. Had a few more fights. But that's a good thing in hindsight, isn't it? At the time, I was offered a good payday, very good payday. And like I said to you, I had nothing to lose. I was told if I was to get beat, I'll still have the Lonsdale belt. I'll still be highly ranked. And after the fight, I was pushed up in the rankings, in the EBU rankings, which we'll speak about later on. I was pushed up in the EBU rankings.
Exactly. And
so,
I mean, you went on to fight Paolo Pizzamiglio. You won him, and you won that, and that was a year later. How did that achievement measure up compared to the British title and fighting for the world?
It was similar. I mean, winning the British title, even though it's only Britain, the Lonsdale belt is a title that every British fighter wants to win, isn't it? It's got so much history behind it. It's a historic belt. So perhaps winning the British was probably just a little bit more of an achievement as such. But being European champion, you get an automatic top 10 ranking. You know what I mean? So it's still a great title to win. It's not held with such prestige as it did, 20, 30 years ago. But it gets you a top 10 ranking. I got a top 10 ranking by the WBC, and at the time, Oscar De La Hoya was champion. You know what I mean? So I was honoured to be even like named alongside him in the rankings. So yeah, it was alongside winning the British title. No, it was great, but it was still a great night for me. I was the main. I was top of the bill. My undercard was Johnny Tapia, even though he was the real top of the bill. You know what I mean? But I was top of the bill. So it was a great night, a great evening, and yeah, winning the EBU title, it's a belt that not a lot of British fighters these days go for. You know what I mean? Like, say, with all these other intercontinental titles and that, they don't really challenge for it like they used to. So it was a great achievement.
It was a fantastic achievement, and I think one of the fights that perhaps was the most famous or memorable from an outsider's perspective was the Takaloo fight. That came in 2004. You were both trained by Jimmy Tibbs at a point, so there was an in-house rivalry there. He was keen to tell people that he dropped you in sparring, and there was a lot of bad blood. And I've heard you say in the past that, yeah, it's true, he did drop you in sparring, but a week later you got the better of it, and he was not keen to talk to people about that. How were fans interpreting that? I mean, were people approaching you with these stories in the build-up? Was it bothering you to hear all the time people saying, "Oh, I heard Takaloo stopped you"? Did it motivate you? How did it affect you?
You know what? It was going on for years. It wasn't just a build up for the fight. It was going on for years. When Takaloo dropped me, he got beaten his next fight. and left Jimmy Tibbs to go with Jim McDonald, and that was you're talking about late 90s. So after that defeat, he told people that he's still fighting me, and he knocked me out, and he done it before, and he do it again. So you're talking about 4 or 5 years. People come up to me and tell me, "Is it true that Takalu put you down and knocked you out?" So I was always a level above him in the ratings, and by people who knew their boxing, they knew I was a level above him. So he improved, and beating Anthony Farnell made everyone sit up and recognise him. So when he beat Farnell, I looked up and I thought, well, yeah, this guy is, he came back his talk. But the last, I say, the build up for the fight, yeah, a couple of months before it did get intense. He told people that he put me out on a stretcher. Which he never did. And like I say, I couldn't lose. Bragging rights. I couldn't lose that fight. It was so personal. We got mutual friends. We got a lot of mutual friends. We're the same age. So yeah, it got quite personal. Like we had friends who knew us both, and I had to pick sides. So yeah, it did get personal. It's a fight that I always said I'd rather die than lose. That's how it was. I could not lose that fight.
And the thing is, for you to say you realised he could back up his talk, although there was a lot of aggression between the two of you and you really wanted to silence him, there must have been some respect there between the both of you in terms of recognising that the other one's got good ability. Like you must have known, even if you felt that you would beat him, you must have known that he was a threat. He's a very good fighter, and he must have felt that about you as well. Did that make you sort of sharper in the build-up, or is that something that you try to lock out of your mind and you try to belittle his level in your mind? In other words, as you're getting closer to the fight, are you telling yourself he's nothing, or are you telling yourself, no, this is a threat and I have to be 100% sharp? How are you going about building that up mentally?
No, going back to what you said, I always said Takaloo could fight. I never ever said he couldn't fight, and he was a poor fighter. I always said he could fight. He was a much better gym fighter. In the gym, he looked brilliant. That's the truth. He looked better than me in the gym. I always said Takaloo could fight. I never said he couldn't fight, but I always believed I was better than him. I always believed I had his number. You know what I mean? And he improved a bit. He improved quite a bit when he left Jimmy. His fitness improved. Because I think he wanted me more than I wanted him. So he always wanted to fight me more than I wanted to fight him. So his dream was to fight me. My dream was never to fight Takaloo. You know what I mean? So yeah, I would say that I would never say that he couldn't fight. Yeah, Takaloo could fight. He was a good fighter, and no, I was just better.
And it was another one of those barn burner fights of yours. When it came to the stoppage, you backed him into a corner, and for me, you threw a right hand where I thought you overreached a little bit. It did land, but it just left this opening where he could just drop this little left hook to the body. It was a liver shot. You were clearly hurt. You tucked up. You widened your stance. You bent forward to hide the body, and he went in for the kill. At that moment, even then, you had your wits about you, because as he was throwing these shots, there was one moment where he threw this big right hand and you slipped on the outside of it. And I thought that was brilliant defense, because if that landed, it was a big shot. He then caught you with a little left hook. You backed up. And then at that point, you're coiled and he coils, and you both set up to throw big hooks. Yours is tighter, the arc's tighter, and you land one of the most beautiful left hooks I have ever seen in boxing. He was unconscious before he hit the floor. Before we get to the actual knockout, what's going through your mind when he lands that body shot? Are you thinking, I'm in trouble here? Like I said, you seem to have your wits about you. Are you planning your next step? What is going through your mind in that moment?
You know what? I was hurt. I was hurt. I was hurt. I mean, I've told everybody one more clean shot in that spot, I would have been down. Do you know what I mean? So I was hurt, so I backed up, as you saw. I backed up, and he made a mistake of. Well, I was almost finished. So I suppose he made a mistake of being a bit too lackadaisical in his defense. You know what I mean? He was open. You know what I mean? So like even though I was hurt, he got a bit too confident. You know what I mean? And went for the opening, and the shot I landed was a shot that Jimmy Tibbs taught both of us when we trained with Jimmy, the hook off the roll. So I see him coming in to finish me off. I see him coming, so I rolled the shot and landed it. You know what I mean? I see what he was doing. I see he was coming to finish me off. So I rolled the shot and he landed straight on the chin. I mean, I've never landed a shot that good before or after. You know what I mean? He came at the right time. You know what I mean? You know, and actually, it was 18 years Saturday gone. You've probably seen it.
Yeah.
On social. Yeah, 18 years ago on Saturday. You know, my finest hour.
To be honest with you, Wayne, I don't think there are a lot of fighters, even elite fighters, that have ever landed a shot like that before or since, to be honest. It was incredible. When you landed, did you instantly know it was over? Or did you wait for the referee's response? Is it one of those where the minute it connected, you thought, right, he's done?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because, you know, I've said this story so many times, it gets boring to some people, but when I landed the shot, right, have you ever heard that? Have you ever heard that saying when someone says everything went in slow motion? Until it happens to you, you can't explain it. If you know what I'm saying, it's like time kind of went slow.
Yeah.
When I landed it, that's true. It sounds weird, but when I landed it, it kind of like slowed down. So like I saw he was gone, and I celebrated. If you see it slow motion, I celebrated as I landed it because I knew that he was gone. You know what I mean? So it was a weird feeling. But yeah, when it landed, something just showed me that that was it. You know, yeah.
And I mean, it sounds incredible. And, you know, as you say, it was your finest hour. And like you said, you got in the top 10 with the EBU, with the WBC after the EBU win. You've now beaten Takaloo as well. Why didn't you end up getting another title shot where you would have been more prepared, do you think? What stopped that happening?
Well, my last fight, my last fight against the Frenchman, Virginie, that was supposed to be a warm-up fight before I fought. Do you remember that guy Dizindruk, Ukrainian or Russian? He was WBO champion. So basically, losing my last fight was what stopped me.
Yeah, because you were expected to win that fight. It was a fight.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What do you think went wrong then in that regard?
Truth, I was slacking in training. The last year of my career, you know what I mean. I was putting on too much weight, and I was a fighter that never really put on more than a stone and a half. I was putting on 2 stone in weight. I was 33. I wasn't as committed as I should have been, which I regret now. You know what I mean? So for that fight, I trained a lot for weight. And I was told it's going to be, you know, an 8-rounder or a 10-rounder. And then when I was told I'm fine, I never heard of the guy. So, you know, I went in there a bit too confident and without no fear. Talking about fear earlier on, I went in there without any fear. You know, bit too relaxed. And next thing you know, I'm on the floor. So the rest is history. You know what I mean?
Well, like I said, there would be a whole bunch of questions coming in from fans that were, you know, so I'm going to get to those later on, but one of them fits in now. Ra Hockham of Punch Out Boxing actually messaged, and he asked something similar, really. He asked, why did his career finish so soon? He retired in 2006, whereas his old rival Takaloo fought until 2011 and had a few big fights. He also said, big up Chris, getting interviews with some blast of the past UK heroes. So there you go. You're a hero of so many guys out there.
Thank you,
Wayne. But the other question is, therefore, you weren't training as much. You were struggling, like you were saying, with the weight. Why did you then stop? Was it a loss of hunger? Did you feel like you just couldn't go on anymore? Because, okay, you've had that blip, but you could have had a rematch and rectified it. What made you say, you know what, I'm done?
You know what? Again, I got lazy. I'm not gonna lie to you. I feel I regret it now because I trained hard for my fights, but when I wasn't training, I didn't live the life. I put on a lot of weight. Do you know what I mean? And I got lazy. I'm not gonna lie to you. I got lazy. You know, and I was a guy that losing to me was like death. You know what I mean? Like some guys would carry on for a couple of years and win some, lose some. But because I knew that I wasn't putting the work in, I said, you know what, Wayne, rather than become a win some, lose some fighter, jack it in, Wayne. I was 33. I wasn't old, but I wasn't young. I passed my prime, and yeah, I said, Wayne, you know, Wayne, I know I should have done better. I know that I should have done better, but you know, I achieved at least half of what I wanted to do. So I said, well, you know what, rather than become a journeyman, and be remembered for your defeats, get out. That's the honest truth. You know, I got lazy, and it would have been hard to get back after that defeat. It would have been hard for me to get back again. You know what I mean? I don't regret it either. I don't regret it. A lot of guys I see, even to this day, you know, have 4, 5 years, 6 years out. I think they can come back and become the same fighter again. You can't. You know, once it's over, it's over. And I've always said that. Once it's over, it's over.
In terms of other fights that you might be able to relate to in some regards, you were a big puncher in light middleweight, like I said, one of the biggest pound for pound punchers in Britain. Conor Benn himself is a big puncher. He was the weight category below you, a welterweight. He's due to fight an iron-chinned Chris Eubank Jr., who's a middleweight, of course, and has operated at super middleweight. When you were in sparring, for instance, at what point did you feel like your punching power reached a limit? In other words, do you think Conor Benn can hurt an iron-chinned middleweight? As a light middleweight who was a huge puncher yourself, how would your power carry in sparring against super middleweights, for instance?
Yeah, listen, I mean, again, without bragging, I sparred with super middleweights and light weights, and I hurt them as well. You know what I mean? If you catch someone right, you're gonna hurt them. You know, and if you are a hard hitter in general, when you catch somebody, you are gonna hurt them. But going back to Conor Benn, he's the smaller man naturally. Eubank can hit hard himself, so I believe Ben is too small. Ben is too small. You know, he doesn't he punches hard, but I don't think he's hard enough to knock out a middleweight. You know what I'm saying? A world class middleweight, which is what Eubank is. Eubank is a world class middleweight.
So it's not just about his own power, but also what he's going to be able to absorb from Eubank, you feel? You just feel that offensively Eubank's going to have too much for him.
Yeah, I mean, a good big and always beats a good little one. You know what I mean? That's the saying, and I do believe that. You know, Ben can fight. Ben's a good fighter. But a good welterweight shouldn't be a good middleweight.
And the thing is with Conor Benn, he's not really a stick and move kind of guy. So he's not even the sort of fighter that can get on the back foot, pop and move and try and win the fight on points. If Conor Benn was to approach you and say, Wayne, I want you in my corner, give me a tactical approach to win this fight, what would you say? Don't take the fight? I mean, what would you say to try and maximize his chances of winning at least?
That is a big question because, I mean, I don't want to speak too far ahead, but I don't think Conor can win this fight. So, I mean, whether I tell him to pull out or not, I don't know. I mean, if he really believes he can do it, that's all that matters, isn't it? If you really believe you can do it, all that matters is what you think. You know what I mean? You know, I've had fights where I've been told or people said you ain't gonna win and I've won. So if you believe you can do it, I would tell him to not go out all guns blazing because Eubank is a bigger, stronger man, and you know he's just as fit as you. So I would personally say to try and drag it out, try and take it longer than 4 or 5 rounds because you don't blow yourself out. You know, because you're a world class puncher at welterweight, not a middleweight. You know, so if you really want to win this fight, I would try and use more tactics rather than go out all guns blazing.
Shifting gears a little bit, you've done some judging and refereeing since you've retired from the sport. We know that there's a lot of controversy in boxing when it comes to judging and refereeing. We've got a massive fight coming up. The unified middleweight champion of the world, Gennady Triple G Golovkin, will square up against the undisputed super middleweight champion, Saul Canelo Alvarez. Now, a lot of people felt that Golovkin won the first fight. Even the second fight, where a lot of people feel that it was a lot closer. There was somebody that compiled the ringside observers, whether they were pundits or former fighters, whether they were journalists. They tried to compile all the scorecards of the people that were there on the night. And of the 59 people that were interviewed, 40 had Golovkin winning the fight, 17 had a draw, and only 2 had Canelo Alvarez winning the fight. They also had an average scorecard where they asked 1,773 fans for their scorecard, and it averaged out to 116, 113 to Golovkin. So even though there were only 2 people of all those 59 ringside observers that felt that Canelo won, he got the decision in the second fight as well. Going into this third fight, there are a lot of people that feel that Golovkin needs a knockout because there's no way he can get a decision. What's your view on that? And what do you think could help to prevent sort of dodgy scorecards, or perhaps even to help judges? Maybe you don't feel that judges are corrupt. Maybe you just feel that they're under a lot of pressure. What do you think would help judges?
Well, going back quickly, I thought Golovkin won the first fight, and the second fight I had a draw. That's my scoring of it, you know. And like going back to judging now. I mean, I've been doing this now for about 10 years now, and I always say, yeah, it's such a subjective thing to do, judging, you know, because I would say 9 out of 10 judges, or more than 9 out of 10 judges, would judge a fight as they see it. You know what I mean? For example, I always say, yeah, a 10-9 round is a fairly close round. You know what I mean? So I could score 10-9 for round 1, 2, and 3 for the blue corner, yeah, and the guy opposite me could score 10-9, 1, 2, and 3 for the red corner. So like even though we've both scored in 3 points difference, it's still a close fight. So I mean, a 10-9 round is a close round. So
I mean, in swing rounds, yeah, you're totally right. But there are some fights, aren't there, where it's really dodgy. I mean, you'll see somebody win 10 rounds and they lose the fight, and everyone sees it the same way. In those sorts of scenarios, do you think there should be maybe a promotion and a demotion type of thing for judges? You know, like you would get in any walk of life. If you're doing a great job, you get promoted. If you're not doing a great job, maybe you're given fights that are of lesser importance until you prove yourselves again. You know, in the Premier League, for instance, referees are scored, and if they're not performing in a way that they believe is up to scratch, they might start to do championship games and stuff like that. Do you think something like that could help? You know, what sort of influence do promoters have as well, with the way they will wine and dine a lot of the judges pre-fight and things like that?
Well, the board of control, they do pull judges when there's a controversial scoring, and they sit him down and ask him how he scored that fight round by round. And if the judge says, you know what, this is how I saw it and I scored it, what can you really say? If you say this is how I saw the fight, what can you say? I would say another idea could be having more judges. You know, like they're 3 now, don't they? Having say five judges. You know what I mean? So there's probably less chance of a dodgy decision. You know what I mean?
Even that though. I mean, you look at the Olympics. The IOC are talking about taking the boxing out of the Olympics, and you know they've had 5 judges in the past. It really is a difficult situation. I do appreciate that. It's hard to know. In terms of the fight itself, how do you think the fight's going to go this time around?
Me personally, I think GGG will have a good start. I think he'll have a good 3 or 4 rounds. But I think Canelo will take over from the middle rounds onwards. You know, I'm a fan of Canelo personally. I like Canelo, so I probably want him to win as well. I do like Canelo. From when he was a welterweight, I've liked him. I like his style of fight. I like everything about him. Judging by the 2 of them, I think GGG is a little bit more shot worn than Canelo. He's a little bit more past it. They're both great fighters, elite fighters. But I think GGG's got a little bit downhill a little bit. Don't you agree? He's got a lot out of both of them. He's the one that's not as good. He's not as good as he was 3 or 4 years ago.
I agree. I mean, he's 40 years old as well. He's more vulnerable to the body.
That's it.
Yeah. So I totally get where you're coming from.
He's saying that I wouldn't mind if he got the win, because I thought he won the first fight at GGG, Golovkin. I thought he won the first time. So I suppose it'd be fair, wouldn't it, if he got the win? You know what I mean?
In terms of Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury, we've heard that they may have agreed terms. What do you think about that? How confident are you that fight goes ahead? And if so, if it was to go ahead on December the 3rd, who do you think wins? Has AJ had enough time to prepare?
It seems that the fight is almost 100% made. He just needs pen to paper. You know what I mean? They've agreed on terms verbally. I know that's not always enough. Eddie Hearn's saying this on. Frank's saying this on. The fighters are saying this on. So that means it's on. I mean, Frank's even said they haven't put pen to paper yet. So that will finalise it. So I'm 90% sure it will happen. But in boxing, anything can happen. But I'm 90% sure by what I'm hearing, it will happen. The fight itself, I think it's a fight that AJ couldn't really turn down. I mean, ideally, I would have liked to have seen him, in a fight before. You know what I mean? A fight against a top 10 fighter. A good 8 or 10 rounds under his belt. I would have personally liked that. But when you offered, the undisputed world title fight, what I mean, against the world number one, massive payday, and you offered a return as well. If you offered a return as well with a good purse, it's hard to say no. Boxing is a short career, anything can happen. And if, again, going back to what I said earlier on, if you really believe you can do it, that's all that matters, isn't it? If you believe in yourself that you can do it, then go for it.
A lot of people feel as though Fury's done this because he almost wants to avoid Alexander Usyk. A lot of people feel as though the logical step would be to go for undisputed first and then to fight Anthony Joshua. What's your view on that? Do you think that Fury does fancy the Usyk fight, or do you just see this as Fury being very confident that he'll beat AJ and then can go on to fight Usyk in the spring?
Well, apparently, Usyk has said he's not ready to fight until March. Apparently, that's what he said. I mean, again, he's world champion. He's a great fighter. So, he'll fight when he's ready. So, he hasn't got to fight when Tyson says so. So, he says he's not ready until March. In the meantime, I suppose Fury wants to keep busy. And like you say, maybe going back, I think Usyk is a harder fight for Fury than AJ. Stars make fights. Usyk's very tricky. He's a good counter puncher. The fight could be a bit boring. You know what I mean? Usyk can make it very hard for Fury, make it look very ordinary. So maybe it is a way of him trying to avoid Usyk. But if he does beat AJ, he'd have to fight Usyk, wouldn't he, to prove that he's number one. You know what I mean? If he doesn't fight Usyk, and Usyk wants it, then he'll always have doubts. When he'll always have people saying he should have fought number one or number two, should I say?
And in terms of, there are another 5 sort of questions I've got from fans of yours that want questions answered. So I'm going to pose those to you now to finish up. One of them comes from Ringside Fracas. They want to know, how does Spence and Crawford play out in your opinion, and how do you think each guy would cope at your old weight category? Like middleweight, obviously, it would be the first time Spence steps up a division. It would be Crawford's 4th weight category. How do you think they would cope in light middleweight?
I think Crawford beats Spence. I think Crawford's the classier fighter, got the more skills, got the better IQ. And I think he's a smarter fighter than Spence. Spence is a great fighter as well. They're both great welterweights, but I just think Crawford's got a bit more class about him, and he's a bit more of an all-round fighter. Got more strength. He's a better combination puncher. I just feel that he's got more attributes than what Spencer's got. It's a close fight. It's a good fight, but I think Crawford's a better fighter. If they go up to light middleweight, I think they'll find it a lot harder. They're not. I won't say they're big welterweights. At light middleweight, you're fighting guys who are coming down from 13 stone. You're fighting a lot bigger men. So again, I think they're being mixed at light middleweight, but I don't think it'd be touch and go with whether they become world champion or not. You got some good fighters there. You got Charlo. You got some good fighters at light middleweight. I think they've just found it a lot harder.
Alvin S at Evercool on Twitter asks, can you ask Wayne who he considers to be the top 5 British fighters of his lifetime?
Off my head, not naming them off my head, yeah. I mean, Straight away, John Conte. He has to be. He's in my eyes one of Britain's best fighters. He was champion when it was only 2 belts. He fought some good top fighters, didn't he? In his time in the 70s and 80s. So John Cotty's up there. Lennox, in my eyes, one of the top 15 heavyweights of all time. Lennox Lewis, some say, is he really British? He was born here, wasn't he? I know he fought for Canada. He speaks Canadian, didn't he? But he's British, isn't he? So I mean, I'd say Lennox, John Cotney, Jim Watt, top lightweight, world champion. When you had to be very good to be a world champion, when you was just 1 belt. You know what I mean? he had a hard, good close fight with Duran. You know, some say he was unfortunately beaten. You know, with that low blow. You know what I mean? So Jim Watt's up there in my eyes. You know, a solid, strong, good southpaw. Only got beat by the best. Joe Kawasaki, obviously, I forgot Joe. I can't forget Joe. Joe Kawasaki, undefeated world champion for how many years? 5, 6 years. You know, he beat whoever was put in front of him. One of the best super middleweights ever. You know, in any country. So yeah, as for Louis Hunnigan, he beat Don Curry. Don Curry, you know, obviously, he was struggling with weight. You know, people say, you know, he was weight drained at the time, but you know, he was still pound for pound probably the best in the world. And Lloyd beat, you know, the best welterweight in the world. People are talking about Don being an all-time great. So you know, that win alone puts him up there in my eyes. I'm sure I missed a few, but yeah.
Well, it's an impossible task, and that is a very talented list of fighters. String at 8, Stringer Bell 8 wants to know the most talented fighter you've ever seen, not the best, but the most talented that you've seen operate, and how that new generation today differs from the generation of old.
Naz, I kind of grew up with Naz. Me and him won national titles together as kids, back in the late 80s, early 90s. Naz, I think would admit that he got himself got a bit lazy towards the end of his career. You know, putting on weight. You know, his last 3 or 4 fights, he was training to lose weight. You know, rather than get fit. You know, but yeah, definitely one of the most naturally talented fighters. You know, he had the skill, he had the power. You know what I mean? He was very hard to hit. You know, so yeah, I mean, Nas, and you're saying
the generation of today, so like the modern day young fighters coming through, so the modern day top fighters today, how are they different from the generation of old? Like Bernard Hopkins, for instance, always used to say that there was a lot more emphasis these days on things like fitness, and maybe that a lot of the sort of technical elements of the past are getting lost in boxing. Maybe you agree with Bernard, maybe you don't. What's the difference between the generations today and those of the past, in terms of, it might just be things like they're more savvy with social media and they're more capable of building themselves up? What do you think is different? How's boxing changed, really?
I think it was harder to become a champion even before my time. It was a lot harder, I'd say, to become a champion. You know, there was less belts. Nowadays there are a lot more belts, which is good for the fighters. There's more money involved. There's more opportunities for guys to earn money, which is a good thing. So social media is a good and a bad thing. Where it's good, where, for example, this fight with AJ and Tyson is going a lot back and forth on social media, isn't it? A lot of them is making offers through Twitter and, you know, social media. So it's a lot more easier now to make fights, you know, to get things happening. The word spreads a lot quicker, doesn't it? You know what I mean? You know, type in a few letters and a few words, and the word gets spread easier. But also, you've got guys who are not the best of fighters, but because they've got a few thousand likes, they believe they're better than what they are. Do you know what I mean? A lot of guys think they're better than what they are through social media.
I've got a message here from, it says Mike Tyson, but Wayne, I don't believe it's the real Mike.
Of course, yeah. I hope it is, but I ain't.
But he pretends to be, because he says, I know Danny Williams is a good friend of yours, and I remember him from when he knocked me spark out. But why
you're funny.
But why has he continued to box on so far, many years after his best? It's clearly bad for his long-term health. Are you worried about him?
Well, firstly, Mike, didn't you carry on fighting for a few years after you were at your best? You're one to talk, aren't you? But you know what? I've been asked that question a few times about that. Danny is my good friend, very good friend, a very humble man, very nice man. I've known him since I was 18 years old. We boxed together at the Lynn. I met him when I was 19 at the Lynn AC. We boxed together at the Lynn. Was in the ABAs together. Boxed in Lynn together. So again, repeat what I said to people. Danny's his own man. Danny will do what he wants to do. I'm not gonna slag him off or put him down or say anything negative about him. You know, Danny will do what he wants. That's all I will say on the matter. You know, because I don't want to. I'll never talk bad about my brother. You know what I mean? Danny knows what he's doing, and hopefully, yeah, hopefully, he'll do the right thing.
And the final question from someone who I think is a massive fan of yours, because when he found out that you were coming on the show, he got very, very excited. Richard Akinola, Richard AK47 is his Twitter handle. He said,
Okay.
what's the best advice you'd give to up-and-coming boxers? And how is your life these days in general?
The best advice I would give to any up-and-coming boxers is dedicate yourself to the game. To up-and-coming pro boxers, I would say an average pro career is about 10 years. That's about the average professional career. I would say dedicate your life and don't have any regrets. Don't leave the sport. I've got regrets. You know, don't leave the sport with regrets. Give it your best shot. You know, time flies. Jimmy Tibbs told me the same thing, and Danny. I remember me and Danny and Jimmy being in the Peacock gym, and Jimmy, you know, who's been in the game now 50 odd years, 60 years, said to us, you know, we was 22 at the time. We was 22. He said, Wayne, Danny, your career, will flash in front of you. You know what I mean? 1 minute you're going to be 30. And we were like, yeah, all right. You know what I mean? Like, we didn't really like look at it too deeply. You know what I mean? And I look now, I'm 49 now. You know what I mean? I can still remember it like yesterday. I can still remember him saying, knuckle down and give you your best shot. But you know, it's such a hard sport to do. You know, most young guys in their 20s having fun, aren't they? You know what I'm saying? So you know, especially nowadays, it's harder nowadays to make it because there's a lot more distractions. People grow up too quickly now. There's other ways to make money. So you know, I understand how guys drift, but I would say give it your best shot, stick at it, and try not to have any regrets when you retire.
How's life for you nowadays in general?
You know what? Life now for me is I'm content. I always say I am content. Life could be a lot worse. I'm a full-time parent to my 10-year-old daughter Shania.
Yeah.
I've been a full-time dad for 2 years. The first couple of years, I was a little bit in limbo land. I thought about coming back, but again, I was like in the gym for a couple of days and out for a couple of days. You know what I mean? Again, I was being lazy. So again, for about a year or so, I was like limbering what to do, and I stuck by my guns and said, Wayne, you know what? Leave it. Don't be with some lose some fire. So life now is okay. I live now in West London. I moved out of Croydon. I'm a full-time parent to my daughter. You know, I'm a referee and judge with Quest Boxing, and I've got a license with the British and Irish Boxing Board, so I do that. I'm a qualified close protection operative. I do security. So you know, life for me is okay. You know, it could be a lot worse. You know, I'm 49 now, and you know, hopefully, I'll be about for a few years more.
Well, Wayne, the thing is, at the end of the day, you entertained us. You achieved brilliant things in boxing. You, like I said, you've got an awful lot of things going for you outside of the sport as well. You've got your faculties intact. Thank God for that beautiful young daughter as well. God bless you guys. So, you know, there's a lot to be grateful for. And from me personally as a fan, I genuinely mean it. I'm so happy that you've come on. I'm a fan. I've loved your style, the way you operated in the ring, and you delighted so many of us for so many years, and I'm delighted to see that you're doing so well. So thank you once again for coming on, Wayne. God bless. Please tell everyone where they can find you online.
I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram at Wayne Alexander the Great. That's how you can contact me.
Thanks so much.
Sorry, my Twitter is at Wayne Boxing. Sorry, at Wayne Boxing.
At Wayne Boxing. Thanks so much, Wayne. I appreciate you coming on. Thanks a lot. And thank you to everybody that's tuned in. Take care, everyone, and God bless.